Hello Generals, my name is UnclDeD and this is a warfare guide for EU4. Most of the existing warfare guides are either superficial or unreasonably long or even both combined. I tried to make it short but filled with useful information. This guide is for players who already played the game for some time but still have questions about how to win battles. Let's talk about major military variables first. Front width is a variable that defines how many regiments can fight in a battle simultaneously. The base combat width is 15 and it grows with military technology. At the game start, most countries have combat width of 20. You can always see your current combat width on military tab and technology screen. Discipline is a modifier which increases damage you inflict. Also, discipline increases military tactics, thus reduces damage you receive. The fact that discipline increases your damage and reduces your losses makes discipline the most important warfare variable. Military tactics reduces the damage you receive. It rises with military technology and scales from your discipline. Morale is the second most important army parameter. While fighting, every day army loses morale when soldiers die. When army morale reaches 0, it retreats to a friendly province chosen by AI. If the morale of your army is higher than 0.5 and the battle lasted for more than 12 days, you can choose a destination of retreat manually. When retreating, army cannot be attacked. The retreating army moves slightly faster than normal. If there is no available friendly provinces to retreat to in large radius, army will retreat to a random nearby province. If there is nowhere to retreat, army will be wiped. When army wins a battle, it gains a part of the maximum morale of the defeated army. If there are several armies fighting in the same battle and one of them was ordered to retreat, all remaining forces will suffer moral hit. Important hint: moral damage scales with maximum morale of your army, not current morale. What affects morale? Military technology, power projection, national ideas, advisor, military traditions, defender of the faith, Muslim piety and some other religion bonuses, and some government forms. In the early stages of the game, morale is more important, but in the endgame, discipline is superior. Combatability is a modifier which increases the damage of a certain unit type. You can see your current combatability bonuses on Military tab. Military Traditions is an important modifier which gives plenty of bonuses. With 100 military traditions, you get plus 25% morale, plus 10% morale recovery rate, and plus 10% manpower recovery rate. Also, you will get better generals with high military traditions. Military traditions rise from battle participation, successful sieges, and maintained forts. Also, there are some national ideas which help to keep them high. Drill is a new troops modifier. With 100% drill, your regiment inflicts additional 10% damage and receives 10% less damage, which is equal to 10% discipline. In battles, your soldiers will die and drill modifier will quickly fade off, so the main purpose of drill is not this temporary 10% discipline, but rather army professionalism gain and general's improvement chance during drilling. Always remember to drill your artillery, because it maintains the drill modifier for much more time since it doesn't suffer as much casualties. Drill also increases your movement speed up to 20%. Army professionalism is a new modifier which rises when army is being drilled and when generals are hired. 100% professionalism gives you 10% damage increase and some other bonuses. You can spend 5% professionalism for a huge load of free manpower, and this is a very powerful feature. Every player faces a dilemma: to foster your army professionalism and say no to mercenaries, or actively use mercs and say no to professionalism bonuses. Every player decides for himself. In single player, it's usually not so hard to avoid large mercenaries use and cap your bonuses. But in multiplayer, you eventually will use mercs in major world wars. And players who have some professionalism by then will have upper hand. They first will convert their professionalism to free manpower and then use mercs. For detailed drill and professionalism tutorial, I suggest you watch Remit Guide, the link will be in description of this video. Every battle consists of alternating phases of fire and shock. Every phase lasts 3 days. You can't retreat from the battle during first 4 phases, 12 days from the start of the battle. In shock phase, units inflict their shock damage, and in fire phase, fire damage. At the game start, most damage comes from shock phase, but in the endgame, armies mostly deal fire damage. Now let's talk about units. Every unit, infantry, cavalry and artillery, has offensive and defensive stats in 3 categories: fire, shock and morale. Offensive stats marked by yellow pips, defensive green pips. In corresponding battle phase, offensive pips increase units' damage and defensive decrease units' casualties. Every player chooses unit types for his playstyle. For me, at the early game offensive pips are preferable for better chances of stackwipe, and in the late game infantry needs more defensive pips while artillery is inflicting damage. Some players believe morale is the main category because shock pips work in shock phase, fire pips in fire phase, and morale pips work in both phases. It is important to be able to correlate different bonuses in your mind. Some examples are shown on the screen. Knowing all that, you will easily estimate real forces correlation between you and your enemies. And as Sun-Tzu said,
"If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles."
Also, it is important to remember that unit's performance always depends on its strength. If there are only 500 men in the regiment, it will inflict only half damage, but it will take space as if there were twice more men. Because of that, if you are going to engage in a hard battle, it is important to merge your regiments before the fight to maximize number of soldiers actually fighting. You can always shift merge to prevent regiments from disappear. There are 3 types of situations when enemy army annihilates instead of retreat. It's called stackwipe. The first is when enemy morale reaches 0 during first 12 days of the battle, before army can retreat and enemy troops are twice less numerous than yours. If you don't have twice more soldiers, enemy will retreat once 12 days have passed. The second type is when enemy army is 10 times smaller than yours. Flory Warrior did some nice abuses with this type of wipe, making a million soldiers army, which wiped every enemy with less than 100,000 troops. The third type is when you attack an army with 0 morale. Mostly this happens when you catch up a retreated army before new month starts. It is important to know that the third type has priority over the second. It means that one single soldier can wipe a million enemies' army if they have 0 morale. Cavalry is just too weak now. It costs 2.5 times more than infantry and some unit types even fight worse. Horses are useful in 2 cases. First is game start wars on 3rd and 4th military attacks, where knights can still make significant damage in shock phase. Second is when you play cavalry country, Poland, Manchu or Mamluks for example. With right ideas taken and national bonuses, you can make your horse army very strong. Cavalry has a good flanking range, but it is useless when both armies are fighting with full front field. And even if you want to have cavalry for flanking, you need only 2 cavalry regiments for that. About cannons. Before 16 military attack, cannons are weak. You usually have just 1 cannon for siege bonus. Sometimes very rich countries can afford to have full front of cannons on 13 attack to win important wars, but generally it's just a waste of money. You should be very careful with cannons. If you run out of infantry reinforcements in battle, your cannons will move to the first row, and that's a really bad sign. On first row, cannons suffer extreme losses. Cannons deployed on second row give half of their defensive pips to the infantry in front of them, making infantry tougher. That's why on the late stages of the game, army without cannons is extremely inefficient. The game can be divided into 2 eras, pre-cannon and cannon era. In pre-cannon era, your army should be equal to battle width with optional addition of 1 cannon for sieges. If you will have more infantry at the battle start, it will move to the second row, and it will suffer morale damage. Soldiers will not take part in ongoing battle, but their morale will get down as fast as on the first row, so when they finally will move to the first row to fight, they will already have low morale. The right tactic for fighting at 20 battle width would be to attack with an army of 20 regiments and gradually reinforce the battle depending on how the battle is going on. And if you will move into a fight with your army lesser than the battle width, you might get additional flanking damage from the enemy. In cannon era, your army should consist of infantry and artillery, both in full front width. I call that strike army. With 40 front wide, it's often painful to move around 80k stacks, so players usually make 2 half-strike army, with 20 infantry and 20 cannons, and merge them before important battles. After the battle started, you should bring there pure infantry reinforcements. The battle width is 32. I attacked with 32 infantry and 32 artillery. As you can see, I have 2 20k stacks nearby, and I will move them into battle if needed. As I told, you should not have too much artillery. For example, with 120k limit, you should have 2 half-strike armies 20-0-20 and 1 stack of full 40k infantry. When your army limit reaches 200, you may have 2 strike armies. That brings you the ability to wage 2 battles at the same time. And when your limit reaches 4 or 500, you may afford the luxury of 3 strike armies. There are several necessary idea groups to maximize military power. In multiplayer, almost everyone takes them. In single player, depending on your need of a stronger army. Quality is a key military idea group. Most people take it first in multiplayer. It gives you military traditions, compatibility to all unit types and 5 discipline. Second idea group is usually economics. It helps to improve your country income and build it up. It also has a good +5 discipline policy with quality. Offensive is usually good for third idea group. It helps to get better generals, gives more army limit and 5 discipline. And a 10% compatibility for cannons policy with economics, that's important too. Fourth idea group brings room for maneuver. You can take trade and get a nice addition to your income. You can get innovations for 20% infantry compatibility policy. Administrative is not so bad, a lot of good mercenaries bonuses there. Religion brings 2 morale policies which were nerfed sometime but still good and useful. Finally, humanism is not bad at all. It really helps with rebels and has +1 shock policy with quantity. Fifth idea closes the pantheon of must-have warmonger ideas. Quantity gives your country more army and unlocks remaining military policies. You can always vary this list. For example, you can take fast administrative for active map painting at start, or defensive for its +15 morale in case you need to get fast battle advantage. Still, quality, economics, offensive, quantity and partly defensive is the golden standard for multiplayer, where you have to fight your way to world domination with players, not AI. A lot of players forget or just don't use policies, and that's a mistake. With quality, economics, offensive, quantity, innovations and religion, you have access to very powerful military policies. Using them in critical wars can earn you a victory. Also, there are some very useful non-military policies too. At the end, some words about hotkeys. Don't be lazy to assign hotkeys on armies. When you have 500 regiments, it may be difficult to find your strike armies. Assigning numeral hotkeys will help you to navigate very fast. Also, don't forget about default military hotkeys. S button will split your army in 2, G button will merge them in 1. Z, X and C buttons will separate all infantry, cavalry and cannons from army respectively. M button is for force march, almost the key button for late stages of the game. K button is responsible for army consolidation, and Shift K will merge your army without losing 0 soldiers regiment. If you did enjoy this video, please subscribe to my channel and I will hopefully make more good videos. Really guys, subscribing helps a lot. And that's all, thank you for watching.